Welcome to the show today. Now, every year, Nigeria goes through a process of putting out an appropriation document, a budget, otherwise called a budget. And the process of getting to that document, many always look forward to with different concerns here and there. And of course, there's usually a lot of noise when it comes to the budget, how it is passed, when it comes out, the performance of the budget and all of that. Some days ago, we all woke up to the news of about 3 trillion naira that appears to be unaccounted for. That led to the suspension of a senator for a couple of months. And yet the conversation around that 3 trillion naira is still out there. And there also some other revelations came forth about certain constituency projects, monies given to constituency projects. Newsnight sat down for a conversation with a research fellow who understands budgeting, and he feels that there is a huge problem with our budgeting system, and that needs to change if Nigeria needs to move forward. Yes, he says, if the country wants to get to be developed as it should be, then our budget and planning needs to be seen and considered as one item. How would that work? Newsnight sat down for a conversation with a specialist in public budgeting, Dr. Emeka Ejikonye. He talks to us about how our budgeting process has been from way back at independence, where it is now, and what it ought to be if we want to go forward. Dr. Emeka Ejikonye, thank you for speaking with us on Newsnight.
Thank you for having me.
You are one resilient person who stood by watching and talking about issues around budgeting for such a long time. So just give us an idea. Why do you think, what's wrong with Nigeria's budgets? Budgets.
Yes. The Nigerian budgeting.
I said, what's wrong with Nigeria's budgets?
Yes.
Not that we can get to the process later.
You see, what is wrong with the budget is that it is not being developed from a budgeting system. It is not being developed from a true budgeting process. The problem we have in Nigeria is that we confuse, all of us, including the media, not just the elected, what we call the politicians, the elected officials. All of us confuse and deploy budgeting as fiscal policy making, focused strictly on public financial management. That's where we have the problem. But budgeting actually is strategic planning. And the primary concern is with laying the foundations of good governance and nurturing the development, the public service delivery process, nurturing it to sustain social advancement. So that's where our problem is. We need to move our conceptual framework, our interpretation of the concept of budgeting from where budgets evolve, emanate from, because budget is a document, isn't it?
Yeah.
The budget comes out from an activity process, budgeting, right? The process that produces our budgets is not the process that should be producing budgets for any nation that wants to develop. That is wherein lies our problem.
Okay. The process that produces our budget is not the process that should produce a budget for any nation that wants to move forward.
Yes.
Now, we do know that with different administrations, they've come up with what has been declared as the different kind of budgeting system, the envelope system, zero budgeting system. And again, you have said that many of us are misunderstanding all of this, just like the political class or the elected class is. So let's break it down. Let's step back again.
Yeah.
What is that budgeting process? What should be the right budgeting process?
Yes. Now, if you look at Nigeria, no matter what you say, this person has said zero budgeting system, this, that, that. But the conceptual framework, how do you define what you've been doing? From independence to date, budgeting has always been an instrument for estimating and authorizing government revenues and expenditure. Do you understand? And our budgets have always been a compilation of the objects of expenditure by line item. You get what I'm saying? I'm saying from independence to date, this has been the conceptual framework, and that is where we are. So that's why budgeting in Nigeria, in actual fact, what budgeting does for us is it is the instrument for actually misappropriating the commonwealth into private pockets. Every year, what we do in Nigeria, when the president goes to present that document to the National Assembly, is activating the process of getting a few individuals to take our commonwealth into their private pockets. You've seen it happening, what we hear in the back and forth, Ningi, whatever, Jarigbe in the National Assembly that is happening now. It is a system of budget padding, whatever you call it, is trying to take the commonwealth into the pocket of a few people.
And you say this has been what has been from independence
to date. So the urgent thing that Nigeria requires is urgent reform. Indeed, if any government in this country is sincere about national development, the first reform it should carry out is budgeting.
Some will argue with you. Some will say the first reform to be carried out is civil service reform, public service reforms.
See, everything will come under the budgeting if you change the concept. Budgeting evolves from a process that budgeting recognizes that governance is a function of a conflictual relationship. I said conflictual. It is not complementary. It should ordinarily be complementary, but it is conflictual between the elected officials and the bureaucracy, which we call civil service in Nigeria. The relationship is not complementary, it is conflictual. You see, in a democratic society, the citizenry, me and you, we delegate, periodically, willingly delegate our sovereignty to an elite group. Even though in Nigeria, I don't think it's really delegation. It's like we surrender it. Because these people, when they go in, they don't seem to be bothered about the people any longer. So it's more like surrender in the Nigerian context. But in the real sense, it is supposed to be, we delegate. We have delegated, what we did in February 25th last year, was delegating our sovereignty to an elite group. Now this elite group is supposed to use our commonwealth, because the reason for delegating is for them to use our commonwealth to deliver services to improve the livelihood, our livelihood, right? Now, for this group of people to do this, they need to walk through what we call a very entrenched group of professionals called the civil service, right? So the civil service is arranged in between the elected officials, which is the government, and the citizenry. If the elected officials do not understand they must effectively control the civil service, they can't get through to the citizenry. And that's why there's a complete disconnect. In Nigeria, there's a complete disconnect between the government and the citizenry, because the civil service is so well entrenched and the elected officials do not have the capacity, have not yet developed the capacity, or do not yet understand that we have delegated our sovereignty to them. It is for them to control this group of people and deliver service to the people.
Control is a strong word to use. Yes. Why do you choose control? Operation
control is a very critical element in budgeting. And that's one reason I'm telling you. You see, because we look at budgeting, I don't know if you have the time so that I can go back to history.
Please, by all means, go ahead.
Yes. You see, budgeting in Nigeria, what we do in Nigeria is what happened, a paradigm that was prescribed in the United States in the 19th century, second half of the 19th century. I'm sure you must have heard about the public administration movement. I'm sure you must have heard about Herbert Simon and the scientific management theory. I don't know if you have. This theory says you must separate politics from administration. Because of the corruption in the American system, then one of the ways the society decided to check it was to say, look, let's separate politics from administration. Politics should be handled by the legislature, administration by the president. So budgeting should serve the president, planning should serve the legislature. You understand? So with this, they now called for a separation. This was what led to the separation of planning from budgeting. From that time. Then later, after the Great Depression, in the first half of the 20th century, the man called John Maynard Keynes, you must have heard Keynesian economic theory, came up with his theories on fiscal policy making, which was what brought economics into the budgetary arena for the first time. But originally, when it was line item budgeting, the people that controlled budgeting were accountants, because it was just it was cost accounting. Line item, just like they say, well, I need a biro, 1 biro, 2 kobo, 2 whatever, you know, you just bring up an item and you put a figure to it. Now, when John Maynard Keynes came up with his own theory, that led to bringing economics 1 into the budgeting arena. And then it led to a confusion, made government to concentrate more on management of the economy rather than society. You know that I'm sure even you, when you talk about, you will talk about Nigerian economy. You don't talk so much about Nigerian society. We are all guilty of this. It is in our mindset. We need to start thinking more in terms of society. Because when you think more in terms of society, you start thinking in terms of the welfare of the people. If you think in terms of economy, unconsciously you're thinking about managing money. The average economist manages money, not welfare of the people. The average economist is more interested in efficiency, not effectiveness. We must understand the differences between these concepts to know where we're. So because we have separated budgeting from, planning from budgeting, that's where we're having a problem. Today, there is no way, any society that's moving, you can't see a situation where budgeting is working separate from planning, because budgeting is planning.
You said there are 3 phases in this whole thing.
Yeah.
There's short, medium, and long term.
Yes.
But we have all of these processes, all of these phases in our budgeting and planning process. Indeed, right now we have budgeting and planning together under one ministry.
That's what I'm saying. It shouldn't be.
It should not be?
Yes.
So you're saying that what was before this administration is the correct one?
The nickname for short-term planning is budgeting. Neota. The other name, I don't know if you have a nickname. You're Neota Beste, right? But people call you, I'll call you Neota. It's a short form of your name. Let's assume that the short form for short-term planning is budgeting. Now, the human being, at the presentation I made recently, one of the officials says budgeting and planning are Siamese twins. No, they are not Siamese twins. Siamese twins are 2 different individuals with different, they are 2 different personalities, probably could join somewhere, right? Budgeting and planning is one individual. The name of that individual is planning. You get it? In that individual, you have the brain that sets the vision, makes the projections. You also have the heart. That is budgeting. The heart that supplies, that moves the blood, that supplies oxygen to the different organs of the body. That is where the nurturing takes place. The third one, which you asked me, is operation control. You see, we continue to say that governance in Nigeria lacks public accountability. Budgeting will give you public accountability, the element of operation control.
Okay, so can we rename this? Because we're talking budgeting, and anybody hearing you will say, but Nigeria has been budgeting. So can we say proper budgeting?
Yeah.
Or public budgeting? Is that what it should
be? Public budgeting
will give you the kind of the desired goals that you want. Now, but is it a question of lack of foresight that led us to this point? Is it that those that are in leadership were not seeing where they want to get us to? That's how we got to this point where, as you say, we're just going around, how much did we get, how much did we spend, and we're not really planning?
No, you see, ordinarily, without the benefit of research at a doctoral level, I wouldn't have known what I know now I'm discussing with you. So I don't blame anybody. You see, there is no synergy between the academia and the political class, the elected officials. It is the job of the academia, which is what I have done, to develop ideas. These ideas will now be sold to the practitioners. for implementation. Fortunately for us in Nigeria now, the idea has been developed, right? It is for them to use it for the benefit of the Nigerians. Like I've told you, as long as we continue to go into the average budgeting office, in fact, in Nigeria you have budget process. No, how can you have budget process? Budget is a document, isn't it? That has pages. So how can you have process in a document that has pages? Process is a function of series of activity steps, isn't it?
Yeah.
Process has to do with activities, a series of activities.
Towards something.
Towards something. So there has to be an element of action. So when you say budget process, where is the process in a document? So these are some of the misconceptions that are keeping us down. We must learn to know that the main issue is budgeting or budgetary for you guys in English. It's either you're talking about budgeting or you're talking about budgetary. So that you know that is it the adjective or verb now? Please, I'm not competent in that area. You know which one, but not budget.
But is it not a question of nomenclature? You're saying it's not about nomenclature.
It's something you take it for granted, but it's confusing us. That's what is keeping us where we are. We need to start thinking more in terms of the process that produces the document. Like you asked me when I tried to say, like just now when I tried to say budgeting, you say, no, what about Nigeria? Budgets. Everybody is thinking in terms of budgets. In fact, when I was, in the course of my PhD, my supervisor wanted me to say, go and survey budgets. Take about 5 budgets of Nigeria and survey. I say, no, sir, that is not what my background does not say I should. I want to look at the activity process that produces, the operational environment that produces this document. That is what I want to look at.
So let's look at the Nigerian environment right now. So you have asserted that from independence, this is where we've been.
Yes.
We've been looking at the budget process.
Yes.
Not looking at the planning that will give birth to the budget.
Yes, we have not looked at the process. We have not yet said, look, okay, let's take one thing. Now you're saying planning is different from budgeting. But look at those two concepts. You will see certain common attributes. Let me now tell you why they converge and why the developed nations are doing what they are developing and we are not. Budget, planning, both have vision. And when I say this, conceptualize them. Planning, budgeting, there's always a vision. There's something you want to achieve, a goal, an objective you want to achieve. Budgeting, planning, there is an intentionality. There's a deliberateness. It's not a chance activity. It is not driven by chance or luck. Yes, you are deliberate. You want to deliberately get on to achieve, in the case of Nigeria now, renewed hope. We want to deliberately go and achieve the renewed hope at the end of the first 4 years of the Tinubu administration, right? The third one, there's an action element. There must be an action element to it. There must be activity. The third one is effect. Look at those 3. If there is no effect in society, you've not done budgeting, you've not done planning. These common attributes have brought about a convergence of these 2 concepts. So rather than as I defined to you, what budgeting is in Nigeria today, estimation and authorization of the revenues and expenditures of government, while budget is compilation of the objects of expenditure of government by line item. If you look at the 2 and put them together now, what we will now have is a definition of planning as deliberately designed and properly applied process and time dimension for achieving a task, a specified task. What is that specified task in the Nigerian context today? Renewed hope. Budgeting is the minimum system of that planning operation. That is why I say, when the planning process comes in short, medium, and long-term perspectives, the nickname, the other name for short-term planning, where the activity takes place, is budgeting.
Is this the reason for the opaqueness of our expenditure process?
Yes, because one thing, Budgeting, okay, like I tried to tell you about the functional elements of budgeting, this alternative conception where I say Nigeria should get to. Objective setting, which we call ordinarily you say policy formulation, program implementation, and operation control. The instrument of public accountability, which is also lacking in Nigeria, is that operation control. That is the instrument that the elected officials rely upon to bind civil servants to the government mission. Now, if you talk about operation control is the instrument of public accountability, the public accountability is driven by two guiding principles. Probity, binding these people, the capacity of the elected officials to bind the civil servants, to lay down rules to eliminate impunity and ineptitude from the budgeting process. And if you eliminate it from the budgeting process, you've eliminated it from governance, right? The second one is transparency, illuminating the budgeting process to prevent the potential of civil servants to conceal information from the elected officials. Now I'm saying this because we assume that we have delegated our sovereignty to the elected officials. So it is not, when you say they should be accountable to the Nigerian people, yeah, they should, but because they cannot hold the civil servants under effective control, they find it difficult to account to you because they're using your resources. Ordinarily, because you're using my resources to improve the quality of my livelihood, you should be able to tell me what you're doing with my resources. But because the system is not well streamlined, the conceptual framework is not perfect. It's not rational enough. That is why we have the problems we have. I will also tell you that, look, I have told you that, look, operation control, which you said is a very heavy term. Like one of your, I was watching your program during the presentation of the last budget. Your colleague on Sunrise Daily, Ayo, the guy in Lagos, he asked about budget performance. The performance of the budget. You know, why should the president of Nigeria be going before the joint sitting of the National Assembly to present a document? A document should produce social effects. Yeah? What the president of Nigeria should be going to the National Assembly to is the effect of that document to the Nigerian people. If Nigeria carries out the reform that I am advocating for, right? The president, the executive will be presenting 3 budgetary evaluation reports, 2 actually, to the National Assembly every year. When he submits the budget document through a proxy at the beginning of the year, right around this time, by the mid-year, it should be able to say that document has the one that is operational. And you see, one good thing about this year is that we have even though when I saw that these guys actually passed the Appropriation Act under 1 month, man, I marveled because it's an impossibility. It can never happen because for you to pass this one, you need performance evaluation reports of the one that is in existence to help you gauge and measure to be able to build the next budget. You know, one of the things that I know that when we come back, we'll be looking at that administrative performance auditing. In Nigeria, one of the things that they'll tell you, you hear from government, debt management office, budget office, indeed government generally, say that Nigeria's problem is revenue mobilization. We need to generate more revenue, we need more income, we need more foreign exchange. So we're talking about revenue mobilization, expenditure allocation, borrowing, lending, and all of that. Yeah. So how does all of this come to play in this efficient and effective, how would it come to play in this efficient and effective allocation of institutional resources? Deployment of institutional resources towards a goal. That is why I say, what you are doing is not what you should be doing. Remember, I told you this conceptual, this is a different conceptualization of the concept of budgeting that I've given you. When you talk about what you do here, revenue mobilization, the common thread that runs through all of them is public financial management. It's management of public finances, right? But one thing that evolved, and I was trying to give you the history of the evolution of budgeting. One of the things that led to the evolution from line item budgeting to where most developed countries is that they found out that, look, we're talking about objects of expenditure, but what is the guarantee? Like, where are the programs that inform these objects of expenditure? From what programs did we develop these objects? Objects of expenditure means, for instance, look, we should have breakfast for tomorrow. We are going to have breakfast. Let's have pap. We will not consider what do we have. Boiled yam and egg sauce, pap and akara or whatever. We agree on one, right? When you agree on what you have, that is the program. You now start talking about, if it is yam, and you talk about you need to go and buy yam. 1 yam, 2 kobo, right? 3 eggs, 3 kobo. This. Where is the program in the Nigerian? Where is the program? You don't find it in Nigerian budgeting. The second angle is, where is the guarantee that if you plow this huge amount of money into the administrative system that has this well-entrenched civil service, that you will actually achieve the purpose? These two questions, the policy, give budgeting the policy angle. Budgeting started developing into a management rather than purely financial management. It became an administrative rather than purely financial management. That's why I say institutional resource. How do you organize the individuals to be able to transmit information to achieve that common, that specified, laid down purpose, which we are in our present scenario is renewed hope. So when now coming back to this alternative conceptual orientation, which I'm advocating for, I have told you budgeting should be the efficient and effective deployment of institutional resources for successful delivery of services to the citizenry.
And you clarify that institutional resource is not necessarily money.
It's not money. No, it's a function of the human element. The human
element. Of which Nigeria is blessed with.
Yes. The people, the personnel of the agencies. How do you organize them? One, intra-agency. How do you organize them to be able to transmit information to achieve the common purpose? Then after that, you will now say the broad sectoral. There are different agencies, Ministry of Finance, how do you now praise and organize all these to be able to actually also achieve? Which brings in the element of coordination. Without the element of coordination, you cannot organize these people, right? And coordination goes through monitoring and evaluation. Where is monitoring and evaluation in our budgeting, in our budgetary process in Nigeria? Monitoring and evaluation, very critical in any government that wants to develop. Where is it? For us to move forward, we need to install what I call administrative performance auditing units or agencies at 3 critical levels of governance. What would this administrative performance auditing do? They will be doing the monitoring and evaluation, that's institutional coordination, which manifests through monitoring and evaluation at 3 levels. The most critical is between the minister and the civil service agency. The president has come in. He has appointed somebody to help him or her oversee the workings of the civil. I have told you that the problem we're having in Nigeria is how the elected officials will effectively control the civil service. There are 3 layers. Government is a function of 2 institutions, the legislature and the executive. You will talk about judiciary. I don't agree with it. I have fallen out of that paradigm that says judiciary. Judiciary is an arm of government that stands on its own. Because while government is there to use the resources, the specific purpose for government is use our commonwealth to deliver services for improving the quality of our life in a strict adherence to a code of conduct that the citizenry has laid down to manage interactions within the system. The judiciary is actually there to interpret that code of conduct, which is the Constitution. So the job of the judiciary is different from what the government does. The president has come in and has appointed ministers. The most critical business of the interaction, level of that interaction, junction of that interaction is between the minister, that's this appointee of the president and the civil service. You must empower the minister with an institutional coordination agency or department to be able to oversee and control and report back to the president. It's not existing in Nigeria. The minister goes in there, whatever the civil servant tells him, he does. You go to the average American ministry, they call them agencies, headed by secretaries. Every secretary has what is called a budget department, headed by a budget director, that helps him or her coordinate that agency. And this guy has access directly to the field level. The civil service is structured. There's an organizational structure. From the top, you have the civil servant, you have the permanent secretary, you have the directors. Then you have the field level offices. We are neglecting those field level offices in Nigeria. Let's take, for example, the Ministry of Agriculture, right? You have the permanent secretary, you have the directors, you have whatever.
Deputy directors.
Then in the local government area, you have agents, I don't know what they call them there, I'm not, but you have units of the ministry, Federal Ministry of Agriculture at the local government that interacts directly with farmers. That should be the agency, that should be the unit that should be developing the budget.
Yes, those are, we used to have extension, not the extension, these are not the extension workers.
I don't know, honestly, I don't know but there's a unit in the organizational structure of the Ministry of, or Ministry of, okay, let me take the Ministry of Education, which I believe I know well enough. The field level units in the Ministry of Education, you have the universities, the vice chancellor and the lecturers. They interact with the students. The citizenry in the university are the students and the parents that pay their bills, right? The point of interaction is between the lecturers and the students. Nobody can tell you what will happen. Nobody can tell you about the Ministry of the problems of the Ministry of Education, if not the lecturers. If not, who interacts with the students? What role do they play in our budgeting? At the secondary school level, you have the principals and the teachers. What role do the teachers in the secondary schools play in our budgeting? Do you understand? It is these people that will have to interact with the Nigerian citizenry, which is the student body, develop the programs. Having developed it, the vice chancellor or the headmistress, headmaster at the primary school level, or the principal at the secondary school will now graduate. That is why I say, I don't know if I define budget for you. Budget, if we must practice, what we must practice is not a compilation of the objects of expenditure by line item. It should now be compilation of the executive summaries of government programs to showcase the services government wants to deliver to the citizenry. And those programs should develop at that field level. Are you getting what I'm saying? We were talking about the whole of Nigeria. Let's take the universities. Yeah? All the universities now develop, the principal, having developed the programs, after doing interaction and experience of what they experience with the students, they develop the program. The vice principal meets. There's an officer in the Ministry of Education the vice principal meets with. They meet and then they negotiate in terms of, because a program could be many pages, but you reduce it to an executive summary, which you now go and negotiate with your boss. The principal negotiates, the vice chancellor negotiates with the boss. They now say, look, these things, executive summaries, this program, which one relates more to the broad policy statement of the government, renewed hope? You now lay a priority. You set a priority of all these programs. Do you understand? As it ascends up the hierarchy of the civil service, what you now have is these executive summaries of these programs. And then move them up. The directors, the minister. When they get there, the minister looks at them and says, look, these ones are more related. You set your own priority and sends to the president looks at it, also and then sends to the... So what the National Assembly will now be approving will not be line item, objects of expenditure. The National Assembly will now be approving specific programs. You get it?
So if I may come here, how does this differ from the medium-term expenditure framework that usually sends to the government?
If you want to drag me into somewhere that is controversial, medium-term expenditure framework is a prescription of the World Bank. It has nothing to do with our own good. I must tell you, Neta. Again, medium-term expenditure framework has to do with financial management. I say we must push all these things aside. The president has talked about local solutions to our problems. I have heard him say that. We need to start developing local prescriptions to the problem of Nigeria. This shoddy statement that you padded the budget by how much? 3 trillion. And nobody is talking about it because you're lacking monitoring and evaluation, which I've told you. The first level of that installation is between the minister. You have to empower the minister to checkmate the civil servants. Second, at the level of the executive, you have to empower Mr. President to checkmate the ministers. Governance is not founded on trust. When I heard the minister, I almost shed tears when I heard the president say he will not interfere with the workings of the ministers. I said, no, sir, you must interfere through administrative performance auditing. There must be an instrument of monitoring and evaluation in your office to help you monitor them, checkmate them from indulging in unethical practices.
I thought he has set up something like that.
No, he has not.
It
has to be a formal agency. It's not one person. It's not one person. You have to formally set up an agency with a structure. Then you put your person you trust on top of that structure.
Okay.
That agency will have to have access. Look, which is where I'm going to the next level of between the legislature and, because you also have to install it between the legislature and the executive. Look, this direct interaction between our legislators and the civil service is wrong. What is the bottom line? Information. What we are looking for between these arms is information. You just need information, moderate the information and take a decision. If you install an administrative performance auditing agency in the National Assembly to checkmate the executive and the bureaucracy and have access direct to that field level, because right now in our ministries, it will be difficult for an ordinary civil servant to access the minister without approval of the permanent secretary. You will be in trouble. We need to, by law, make it known to them that, look, there has to be an agency that can access down to the field level, not just anybody, the field level officer. There has to be an agency answerable to the minister at that level, answerable to the president at that level, answerable to the legislators at the level of the National Assembly, that has direct access to the field level officials by law. So that the permanent secretary will not come and say, soldier go, soldier come, barrack day. Then he will deal with whoever does that at the end. No, it has to be done by law. So we need to install this institutional coordination, these instruments of institutional coordination. Two things that we must install at the level of the executive. What we do today, which I've told you, economic, public financial management, there is an agency called the Council of Economic Advisors to the President. It is lacking in Nigeria. We need to build that council in the executive to do whatever we are doing today in terms of economic management, what we call budgeting. Then we build a budgeting bureau that will now be doing the institutional coordination, monitoring and evaluation for the on behalf of the president at that level.
Dr. Jinkore, again, in my mind, when you say building what do you call it now, an economic council that will advise the president, I do know that the president has an economic team. Is it different from that?
Yes, of course.
Again, when you talk about this, the other council you talk, or another team you were talking about setting up again, And in my mind, and I'm sure in the mind of many viewers, these things already exist.
No, they don't. Not in terms of, not in the way I'm talking about it.
And then when you talk about, again, so that you put it all together, because we're running out of time, when you talk about another law, they will say that we have enough laws. Our problem is we're not even enforcing the laws.
Well, my take is that you don't have enough laws. If an idea, and you say the idea is good, comes up, you have to back it up with a law. And then you have to implement it, right? The one thing is to buy in to an idea. If you buy into this idea, we now say, look, Mr. President, we are practicing, our democracy is fashioned along the lines of the United States of America. In 1947, the United States set up the Council of Economic Advisors in the office of the president. It's a formal agency. What the president is a formal organization there with permanent staff. What the president does when he has is he appoints the head. When he leaves, he takes the head away. That agency remains. Are you getting what I'm saying? When I say an institutional coordinator agency is a permanent agency with permanent pensionable staff working on behalf for the president to carry out the purpose of the president. They are there not to carry out they are there to help the president achieve renewed hope. When the president comes in, he brings in the chief executive officer of that agency because that's the person he can trust to say, look, help me sit on top of this agency and then go in and coordinate, monitor and evaluate the workings of the civil service. When he's leaving, he leaves only with that officer. It's not existing in Nigerian Delta. It's not. You will see at the level, at the first level, you will see that direct relationship between the legislators and the civil servants. You see, what happens in budgeting in Nigeria is, budgeting is developed, budgets are developed at the level of what is called a department, a unit within the Department of Finance and Accounts. The Director of Finance and Accounts has a unit under him called budget. When it is time to prepare the budget, they just go there, concoct whatever, line items. There's no access to any, no other person plays any role in the budgeting of the country. They take this in, they carry it, even the minister does not even know. It's whatever they bring to the minister takes to the president. And the president is a lame dog, does not play any role, apart from taking that into the National Assembly. That's why it's so shameful. Meanwhile, you are supposed to be the only elected chief executive officer of governance. You are the one we hold responsible. What I'm even proposing is rather than a minister coming in with special advisor, a special assistant, he comes with a budget, a director of budget. By law, we must know the qualification of that human being because you are there to help him run this agency that is to help him coordinate the civil service. So you're coming in now with a director of budgeting. And that budgeting office is in the office of the minister. It is not under the control of the permanent secretary or the other directors. I hope you understand what you get what I'm saying. The mental state, the emotion, the orientation of the officials of this office is to help the minister achieve his purpose, which is what the president has delegated him to achieve at that level. So that's their orientation. They must see the civil servants in the ministry, the other civil servants as enemies. This esprit de corps thing is not there. We are here to checkmate you guys from doing the wrong thing. We must build it. At the level of the executive too, we must build it to have an agency that will help the president checkmate the ministers that form the Federal Executive Council. It's a shame that the only policy review organ we have in Nigeria is the Federal Executive Council. The president needs an independent, alternative, or parallel policy review and bureaucratic control capability compared to this thing. You can't continue. The Federal Executive Council is a collegiate body. So if me and you are part of a minister, we can conspire and vote out, and the president becomes a lame dog. In fact, if I were to come close to the president, I would tell him to look, play down on frequent meetings of the Federal Executive. Deal with the ministers more on a bilateral level rather than this collegiate level. Unless there's something critical about it, you convene a meeting of the Federal Executive. Not this frequent thing that, You have the power. You are the only one. We are the one. You are the only elected chief executive officer of governance. The power is too much. You don't give this power away just like that. No, you don't. I don't know if you get what I'm saying.
I do.
Yeah, please. I'm trying as much as possible to break it down. It's a very difficult thing to. Yeah.
Okay, we have to go. So, one in 30 seconds to a minute. A word of advice for Nigerians, and indeed both elected and the led all the way.
Change your conception. Change your conception. Your definition of budgeting. Let's reform budgeting, please. Because it is from budgeting, that will start solving the problem of security. You see, for me, the priority of Nigeria today is to solve the problem of hunger. But there's no way you can solve the problem of hunger if forests are not safe for farmers to go into. As long as we continue to put this money, particularly in the Ministry of Defense, at the level of the minister and the permanent secretaries in the Ministry of Defense, we can never achieve our purpose. We must get down to the big guys in the field. Those field operators, find out what they require and allow the ministry industrial complex to supply that thing directly to them. I said within 2 months, we will move, our military will clear the forests. Our farmers, these young boys that are here picking garbage in Nigeria and going back to the farms to farm, will go back and Nigeria will start moving. Honestly, first thing first, budgetary reform is where to start for Nigeria to develop.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
I'm very grateful.
Thank you.
Thanks for giving me the time.
As it is said, at one point or the other, all good things have to come to an end, and this is that point where we say thank you for letting us be a part of your day. Send us a comment, send us a tweet, and email. Our addresses are right there on your screen. We would love to hear from you. Also, you can catch up with these conversations and other conversations we've had before now. Just go to our website, channelstv.com/podcast to get started. You can also get to youtube.com/channelsweb to get some of our videos as well. Till we come your way again, this is where we say bye-bye.